Well, weeks after a ceasefire agreement between the US and Iran collapsed, Iran has now said it's close to a deal with Oman on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz.
The proposed agreement will give Tehran control over ships entering the strait, but Iran said it is conditional on the US ending its blockade of ports.
Well, in a moment, we'll look at what it means for the US and the rest of the world if this deal is agreed. But first, Una Smith has this report.
In retaliation for the US-Israeli bombardment of Iran's cities and infrastructure, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz last February. The closure, which blocked the transport of a quarter of the world's oil supply and 20% of gas, has impacted energy prices everywhere, but crucially at the pumps in gas-guzzling, car-dependent America, heading into the midterm elections. Now it's reported that an imminent deal to reopen the strait by Iran and Oman on the other side of the waterway, which includes a service fee to be split between the two countries, might be acceptable to the US. The breakthrough is being treated with caution, as we've had false dawns before. Not long after the US and Iran first announced a ceasefire, both sides began firing on each other's ships. Then, in late April, an extension of the ceasefire was announced. But within weeks, it was faltering.
I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support.
A week later, more uncertainty.
We were getting ready to do a very major attack tomorrow. I put it off for a little while, hopefully maybe forever, but possibly for a little while, because we've had very big discussions with Iran.
The following weeks, however, saw attacks on all sides, with the US striking Iran and Iran striking Gulf states after Israeli attacks in Lebanon. Then, after negotiations, this.
Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow.
This accompanied news of a memorandum of understanding and a 60-day ceasefire. But it didn't last. Clashes resumed, driven by disagreement over who controlled the Strait of Hormuz. Then, after attacks halted in late June and talks resumed, a reversal.
I don't want to deal with them anymore, with this scum.
With this response.
The Strait of Hormuz will only open with Iranian arrangements, not American threats.
And then, after more attacks and negotiations, another change.
I have agreed, for the future benefit of the world, to cancel the attack, subject to being able to rapidly make a deal.
And now the announcement that Iran is close to an agreement with Oman on the reopening of the strait has made a wider deal possible. But there's a glaring problem. A global shipping route, freely used before the war, may be partly controlled by Iran, something the US president promised would never happen.
That report from Una Smith. Well, with more, we're joined now here in studio by Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at UCD, and from Doha by Paul Musgrave, Associate Professor of Government at Georgetown University in Qatar. And thank you both very much for joining us this evening. Scott, I might come to yourself and this talk then about a proposed deal giving Tehran control over the strait. What does that mean, control?
What the proposal, from what we know about it, is it's not just Iran, it's also the Gulf state of Oman, which is to the southern part of the strait, and they would manage passage through the strait. The northern route, which is along the Iranian coast, the Iranians would control that. That's entry into the strait. The exit route through the strait would be along the Omani coast. The Omanis would oversee that, but in consultation with Iran. We do not know yet what level of fees or tolls will be charged. That's still being negotiated between the two countries, but they would be responsible for the security of the ships going through the strait. But it also means that if they felt those ships were not observing proper protocols, including paying any fees or tolls, they could, in theory, block that traffic.
We don't know yet whether or not there will be tolls. There may not be?
What we have heard is this, and we have heard a couple of different accounts. One is that the Iranians have been considering the proposal of a fee. They might call it a maritime fee. They might call it an environmental charge. But what we heard yesterday from different officials is Iran is looking for a 5% fee, a toll on ships going through. Oman was looking at 3%. Now, if these reports are true, it means that in principle, they've reached the agreement. It's just closing that gap in terms of the financial arrangements.
I might bring you in on this then, Paul, because US Secretary of State Marco Rubio had said any control by any country over international waters would be unacceptable, that it would set a precedent for other parts of the world. And yet here we are. So are we looking at a strategic defeat for the US, on this aspect at least?
I think it's unquestioned that the United States has suffered a strategic defeat in a war that, of course, the United States began. War is a risky, costly gamble. The United States took it under President Trump's leadership, and it has lost. At this point, the question is whether or not the United States can salvage something that is acceptable to the United States, or whether those gambles will continue. And this is where those details really matter. There's a lot of rumors floating around right now, as you might imagine. There's texts, there's drafts or purported drafts that are being discussed in the Iranian parliament. Some of those include provisions that I think no American president could agree to. And then there's also the question of whether other GCC countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and others would also allow Oman to negotiate on their behalf, something that they definitely want a negotiated agreement, but the details might also be difficult for them. And behind all of this, I think, is the fact that the Iranians have made clear that in the aftermath of the U.S. begun war, they are looking for something that leaves them with a much stronger strategic position than they had. And of course, at the moment, for all that folks are concerned about other issues, ballistic missiles, Iranian proxies, and of course, nuclear programs, the Strait of Hormuz itself is what we're talking about, and we're seeking to restore something that approximates what the world enjoyed back in February.
And on that point that you made about the neighbouring countries, I'm interested in your perspective on that. I mean, what is it that they want, and what is the realistic prospect of them getting here?
Well, those are two distinct questions. What they want is something that looks like the status quo. And I think that other GCC countries have been very clear that they want to resist Iranian aggression. Many of them have condemned, of course, the U.S. and Israeli aggression, even those who have allowed for, American troops and bases to be used. And then they want to make sure that there's freedom of navigation. What they will accept is a different question. What would be acceptable to them would be something that allows their exports to the world energy market, which of course, Ireland has been affected by the increase in natural gas prices as a result of this conflict. They want to have a restart of the free flow of commerce through the Strait. Now, that's where some of those provisions that Professor Lucas was talking about really come into play. If those fees are structured as tolls or something that's mandatory, that's a terrible precedent. But if there's a face-saving agreement, or even something that really looks like a genuine environmental, navigational, other sort of a fee that could be patterned over something that is in existence in the Strait of Malacca, where there is a voluntary arrangement, that would be more palatable despite the very real change in the status quo that any such arrangement would require.
OK. And Scott, Donald Trump has been saying that if there is no deal, there'll be a massive strike on Iran. But at the same time, Donald Trump is dealing at home with problems over what weapons he has left for a massive strike in Iran, with all these reports that the US is running out of some key munitions.
Rule number one is never rely on Donald Trump's statements. Go to the realities that took place. Last week, big meeting at Camp David in Maryland. All the top people of Trump's cabinet there. Are they going to expand the war inside Iran? And what they are told by the U.S. military is you have a shortage of air defense interceptors to protect countries if Iran retaliates, and you have a shortage of offensive missiles to keep on carrying on the strikes. On top of that, the Saudi leader Mohammed bin Salman, in a call with Donald Trump a week ago, said that the Gulf states are not going to support an expansion of action unless you are going to knock the regime out, which isn't going to happen. What do we have? Where we are now? That shortage of munitions got so serious that it means that the U.S. has backed off any type of military option for now, and it led to Donald Trump having a stand-up row with his Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth. When Hegseth was challenged over the shortage of munitions, he blamed his deputy, Stephen Feinberg, who then had to convene an emergency meeting in the Pentagon to try to deal with the whole mess. Short answer, the Americans are out of military options now, I think, and it's a question of when they come back to the table, not only on the Strait of Hormuz, but on the other provisions, such as lifting of sanctions, Iran's frozen assets, and of course, Iran's nuclear program.
I mean, Donald Trump, Paul, is saying, of course, that they're not out of these weapons, but Scott has outlined all the evidence to the contrary. Having said that, Donald Trump is threatening another strike if there is no deal, and Iran is saying that if there's more strikes by the US, then they'll expand their strikes among the GCC countries. Where do the GCC countries stand on all of that, this war potentially restarting in earnest?
Well, there is some tension here. On the one hand, nobody enjoys seeing missiles explode nearby. Nobody enjoys seeing missiles intercepted overhead. But on the other hand, one of the things that the GCC countries are acutely aware that they are playing for is the long-term security and the regional architecture of this entire area. And that's something that is very difficult to bargain over because Iran, during the course of the war, made clear with its targeting decisions, with its strikes on places like Ras Laffan, the LNG refinery here, that it was interested, it was willing to carry out direct strikes on civilian infrastructure. The Iranians have said that they have very expansive ambitions, and if you take steps that alienate or weaken your posture in the face of that, you're really gambling with the sovereignties and the futures of the region. And because of this region's continued importance to energy markets globally, that has global repercussions. And so that is something that I think Gulf leaders are torn by. They want the conflict to end. They want it to end on terms that are acceptable to them. And that is just a very difficult formula to solve.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us on the programme this evening. And Scott, thank you as well for coming in to us. Miriam.